Namaste. Plato, the Greek philosopher, was born around 428 and 427 BCE, and he died around 348 and 347 BCE. He's known as one of the most important figures in the history of Western philosophy. He was a student of Socrates and the teacher of none other than Aristotle, and he wrote many influential books on a wide range of topics such as ethics, politics, metaphysics, and epistemology. Not only that, he founded the Academy in Athens, one of the earliest institutions of higher learning in the Western world. Plato's Republic is a 10-book philosophical dialogue examining the nature of justice and the ideal society. The book portrays Socrates conversing with several Athenians in an attempt to define justice and the characteristics of a perfect society. The Republic discusses a variety of topics, including the nature of reality, the nature of the soul, the role of the philosopher, and the organization of the state. It is one of the most influential works of Western philosophy, and it continues to be studied and debated by scholars to this day. This presentation will commence with an examination of Plato's Allegory of the cave and then transition to the topic of Vedanta and its significance in leading a free, serene, enlightening, and fulfilling life. Plato's Allegory of the Cave. Plato's Allegory of the Cave is a story in which he uses a fictional situation to explain the nature of reality and the limitations of human understanding. In the allegory, several prisoners are kept in a cave their entire lives, facing a wall. They cannot see anything else in the cave or the outside world. These prisoners believe that the shadows they see on the wall are real and represent the only reality there is. They have never seen anything else and have no knowledge of the outside world. One day, one prisoner is freed and allowed to leave the cave. He is at first blinded by the light and has a hard time accepting the new reality presented to him. He eventually realizes that the shadows of the cave are not the only reality and that there is a whole world outside the cave. He goes back to the cave to tell the other prisoners about the real world, but they don't believe him. They're so used to the shadows that they can't even imagine anything else. They think the released prisoner is crazy and do not listen to him. Plato used this allegory to explain his theory of forms. He believed that the real world was not the physical world we see around us, but rather a world of eternal forms or ideas. I'd like to mention that names and forms are called namarupa in Sanskrit. Plato goes on to explain that just as the prisoners in the cave could only see shadows of objects, we can only see imperfect copies of the forms in the physical world. The released prisoner represents the philosopher who has seen the forms and tries to enlighten others, but they are too attached to their belief in the shadows, which represent worldly desires, and cannot understand the truth. In philosophical terms, I would analogize as follows. The cave, one's life of ignorance. The prisoners in the cave, people who have been trained to believe in things for which there is no evidence and in which there is no truth. The released prisoner. Plato calls such a person a philosopher. But I would say that it could be anyone with a small amount of courage and a spirit of inquiry. Such a person would not be satisfied by achieving the ability to merely regurgitate shlokas and mantras, but would sincerely strive to comprehend the truth in them, and would also dare to ask questions. The bright sunlight outside and the real world outside the cave. It's Vedanta, or the highest knowledge of the self, known as Atma-jnana or Brahma-jnana. The prisoners who refused to believe the released prisoner. People who are fundamentally mental slaves, tied to belief systems, organized religions and cults, and all others who would deliberately shut their eyes and ears, even when they have the opportunity to learn the supreme truth. The solution is Vedanta. A simple way to get out of the cave of ignorance would be to begin by reading the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. I mean, merely a simple translation of the scripture, and not some heavy book with detailed interpretations. Such detailed books written by great teachers would be useful only after one has acquired a general understanding of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In my experience, I have observed that most people who decide to read the Srimad Bhagavad Gita usually get a large edition of the scripture and give up reading it even before they cross the preface, the introduction, and the detailed interpretation of the first two shlokas, simply because all that seems to them too overwhelming. To address this stumbling block, I offer the following resources. 1. A website that provides a simple translation of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita with large fonts for easy readability. 2. A video that offers a run-through of the entire scripture. 3. Several other videos related to the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. 4. A book titled Capture the Essence, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which consists of merely 61 pages. 2 other books available on my Amazon store. Audiobooks and courses available on Udemy. When you read the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, I suggest that you, as a seeker, bear the following in mind. Position yourself as Arjuna, never mind your gender. In the process of learning, everyone is, just as Arjuna was at first, an ignorant person with a mind filled with attachments, passions, emotions, preconceived notions, and beliefs. Go with the flow of the supreme scripture, which begins with Arjuna's state of despondency and goes through a systematic approach to clearing his mind of clouds of duality, doubts, his false understanding of the I-ness in him, his work, his duties, his relations with others and nature, and all the meaningless rites and rituals. As you proceed through the different chapters of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, you will realize that Krishna is not some separate being up there, but is the personification of all that exists and does not exist. And above all, he is the self or the Atman in you. Shloka 10:20. Ahamatma gudakesha sarvabhutashe stitaha ahamadishcha madhyamcha bhutanamanta evacha. I am the self, Arjuna, situated within all living entities. I am the origin, the middle, and also the end of all beings, says Krishna. There is nothing other than the all-pervading self, Atman, Krishna, or Brahman. The entire problem stems from a false understanding of Atman. Thanks to most storytellers, films, and the transfer of false knowledge that has been taking place for generations, the Atman or soul is wrongly understood to be some spirit-like being that enters and exits out of bodies. No, that is neither true nor even remotely explainable. The fact is that Brahman, the self, Atman or Krishna, is all-pervading. And all-pervading means all-pervading. The Atman manifests itself and is visible through what are known as upadhi or mediums, such as living beings and non-living things. Do you think the self, Atman, Brahman or Krishna does not exist in empty space? In Shloka 11:20, Arjuna says to Krishna, "The space between the earth and the heaven and all the quarters are filled by you alone, O Paramatma." Brahman is not a person, but the whole of existence and its awareness. Another critical issue is that people need to comprehend the true meaning of the word bhakti, which is a Sanskrit word for devotion. Devotion means being totally committed. Ask yourself, when you say a person is devoted to his parents, children, or spouse, do you think they perform pujas on them every day, pouring bovine milk on them or showering flowers on them? Always remember that the goal of studying the Srimad Bhagavad Gita is not to develop dualistic bhakti towards Krishna, perform his pujas every day, pray to him, dance on the streets, and make a mockery of yourself, or ask for unearned favors. But it is to acquire true knowledge of the self. Krishna says it in so many words in Shloka 7:24. Avyaktam vyaktimapannam manyante mama buddhaya param bhavam ajananto mamavyayam anuttamam. Foolish people who do not know my formless, exalted, imperishable and supreme nature think I assume a manifest human form. I remind people in almost all my talks that Arjuna never did what many people do, pray to Krishna or God and ask for favors. Arjuna never asked Krishna to perform any special miracle for him and make him victorious. What Arjuna did was ask Krishna, the Jagat Guru, or the teacher of the universe, to teach him the right way to carry out his duties. Shall I tell you something? When I began teaching my son the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he was around 6 years old or so. Ever since the beginning, I encouraged him to view the scripture as a grand metaphor, with each and every character in it symbolizing some factor or other in life. Learning this approach helps him in his various fields of study, enabling him to easily internalize all that he studies. Let me ask you, what do you do when your clothes are soiled? You use water to clean them, don't you? What do you do when your mind is covered with ignorance? Well, the only practical way to purify it would not be with water, but through acquiring true knowledge. Knowledge is the only way to burn ignorance and all the karma that comes with it. Now just listen to this amazingly powerful shloka, which is also my personal signature shloka. It's 437. Yathaidhamsi samidhognir bhasmasat kurute arjuna jnanagnihi sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. Just as a blazing fire burns wood used as fuel into ashes, Arjuna, knowledge burns all karma or actions into ashes. I suggest the 10 principal Upanishads, which are freely available on the internet. Read merely the translation of them. Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandukya, Aitreya, Taitriya, Chandogya, Vritaranyaka. The most important step to begin with, however, would be to make a firm resolution to exit out of the cave of ignorance, superstition, and all other dualistic beliefs. Look, you can create a one-year project to completely transform your life through Vedanta. Free yourself from all your beliefs, rites, rituals, godmen, godwomen, and so on. Be free. Who are you praying to? To yourself. Who are you afraid of? Are you afraid of others and the outside world? Remember that whatever you believe or fear completely depends on your perception of it. There cannot be anything other than the all-pervading self, Atman, Krishna, or Brahman. The greatest truth found in the Mahavakyas, or great statements of the Upanishads in three grammatical persons, is as follows. 1. In the third person, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is Brahman. Chandogya Upanishad 3:14-1. 2. In the second person, Tattvamasi, that you are. Chandogya Upanishad 6:8-7. 3. In the first person, Aham Brahmasmi. I, or rather myself, and not my ego or assumption of my body-mind complex, and Brahman. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 1:4-10. Here is another Mahavakya, which is Shloka 3:3 from the Aitariya Upanishad. Prajnanam Brahma. Consciousness is Brahman. It's time to exit the cave of ignorance. Start with reading and understanding the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. May the knowledge of Vedanta fill your life with an abundance of bliss, great health, prosperity, and fulfillment. Stay blessed. Jai Shri Krishna.